Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt your heart whisper something before your mind could catch up? A quiet, steady pull in your gut, saying something's wrong. It's not paranoia. It's not overthinking. It's your intuition. And for most of us, especially women, we've been taught to silence that voice, to second guess ourselves, to doubt what we feel. But that voice, the one that wakes you up in the middle of the night, that makes your chest tighten when he doesn't answer his phone, that lingers long after you've smelled the perfume that wasn't yours, that voice is sacred. It's the signal that your soul is trying to tell you the truth. I want a story. A woman came up to me after a talk I gave a few years ago. She was elegant, poised, polished. She looked like she had it all together. And she leaned in and whispered, "How do you know when someone's lying to you? When they're cheating? When they've made you feel crazy for suspecting the truth?" And I told her what I'm about to tell you now. You don't catch a cheat with rage. You catch them with reality. But by breaking yourself, but by building yourself up. This isn't about revenge. This is about reclamation. This is about power. And today, I'm going to give you 5 steps, not just to catch a cheat, but to reclaim your inner intelligence, your peace, your clarity, your fire. Let's begin. Chapter 1 is silence speaks louder than questions. The first step is silence. Now I know, some of you feel that drop in your chest right now because silence sounds passive, it sounds like surrender. But I want you to hear me, silence is not retreat. Silence is not inaction, silence is control. When someone's lying to you, when you feel it deep in your gut and your bones, your first instinct is almost always the same: confront them, corner them. Get the truth out right now. You want to pull them into the ring and demand they answer for the ache they've planted inside you. But here's what I need you to understand: people who cheat, they lie with discipline. They don't just make things up on the spot, they've prepared. They've thought about how they'd respond if you ever started asking. They've built a second identity, an alternate reality. And the moment you start questioning them too soon, you signal that you're onto them. You're handing them the chance to erase the evidence, twist the story, rehearse better. You've given up your position. You've shown your cards. So silence, it's your power move. Because when you go silent, not in coldness, but in presence, you shift the dynamic. You observe. You don't accuse, you assess. You're not reacting, you're reading. I learned this in interrogation rooms. I've sat across from some of the most hardened criminals. I've seen people fold not because we shouted, but because we said nothing. Because in that space, when they're not being interrupted, they fill it with noise, liars, overtalk. They rush to justify. They offer extra details that don't belong. They cover up cracks that weren't there until they made them. And I saw the same thing in relationships. I remember a woman, strong, brilliant, who had been with her partner for 7 years. She came to me, unsure, her gut was screaming, but there was no proof. No text, no lipstick on a collar, nothing Hollywood. But she felt it, so I told her, stop talking. Just listen. Keep the rhythm of the relationship the same. Don't change anything. But start watching. Don't accuse. Just observe. Let him speak. Give him the rope. 2 weeks later, she noticed something, a change in his stories, a lie that contradicted something he'd said casually before, and then another and another. Patterns formed. His energy shifted. He started growing defensive before she even said a word. That's what silence does. It opens the door for the truth to walk in on its own. Most people don't realize that when you're silent, you're actually the one in control. Because you're giving yourself the space to gather real information, not filtered through emotion or fear or panic. You're not looking for a confession. You're looking for inconsistency. You're training your mind to become sharp, to become strategic. This is the moment where you stop playing checkers and start playing chess. You think long, you move with intention. You let your silence become the mirror they can't hide from. Because here's the secret: liars trip on their own words. They get tangled in the story they're trying to manage. And when you stop giving them the energy of your reaction, when you don't interrupt them, when you don't feed the drama, they start to unravel, slowly, messily, inevitably. But that only happens if you don't tip your hand. Silence lets you study. Silence gives you leverage. It buys you time, space, power. Most importantly, it gives you clarity. Because in silence, your mind gets quiet enough to finally hear your own intuition. That voice you've been taught to ignore. The one you've silenced out of fear of being crazy, paranoid. That voice is your truth. And when you let things be still for just long enough, you'll feel what you've known all along. This isn't about playing games. This isn't about manipulation. It's about master yourself, of your space, of the moment, and mastering your silence is the first true step to regaining your dignity, your direction, your peace. You do not catch a cheat by chasing them down. You catch them by stepping back, by letting them show you who they are without warning, without defense, without distraction. Silence isn't absence, it's presence. Focused, unwavering, powerful presence. And in that silence, the truth always reveals itself. Chapter 2, trust your gut, but confirm with facts. There's a moment, quiet, subtle, and unmistakable, when your body knows something is off before your brain can make sense of it. You might not have a shred of evidence. No lipstick-stained collar, no suspicious texts, nothing you can point to, and yet there it is. That tightness in your chest, that sinking feeling in your stomach. The way your skin prickles when they walk into the room like they're bringing a different energy with them. That's not imagination, that's biology. We are hardwired to sense deception. Your nervous system, your instincts, your subconscious, these are ancient tools. They've been keeping humans alive for thousands of years. Before we had language, before we could explain what we were feeling, we had sensation. And when you feel discomfort, when your gut starts speaking, you need to listen, because it's noticing things your conscious mind hasn't caught yet. It picks up on micro-expressions, those fleeting flickers of emotion that cross someone's face with a subtle and diversion they want to show you. It registers tone changes, delayed reactions, too much eye contact, or not enough. It notices shifts in behavior so subtle you couldn't explain them if you tried. But your body knows still. Here's the catch: just because your gut says something is wrong doesn't mean you confront with that alone. Your intuition is the signal, but evidence is the confirmation. You don't want to fall into the trap of chasing ghosts, of seeing things where there are none. You don't want to become so consumed by the feeling that you lose your grip on reality. That's not strength, that's chaos. And chaos is the breeding ground for manipulation, especially from someone who wants you to doubt yourself. So you need both your inner truth and outer clarity. And clarity doesn't come from drama. It doesn't come from screaming, "I know you're lying," or scrolling through every text message at 3 a.m. until your eyes burn. It comes from calm, consistent observation. You become the collector, not the accuser. You start noticing the patterns. Not just once, not just, but over time. You build a case file not with the intensity of obsession, but with the precision of someone who refuses to be fooled. Does his story change every time he tells it? Is he suddenly vague where he used to be specific? Do the timelines match? Why is his phone always on silent now? Why is he protective over it like it holds nuclear codes? But let me be clear, this isn't about becoming paranoid. This isn't about turning your relationship into a surveillance operation. It's about shifting your focus from emotionally reacting to strategically responding. When you take your emotion out of the equation, not your humanity, not your intuition, but the emotional chaos, you take back your power. You become steady, clear, sharp, because that's what truth needs. It doesn't need panic, it needs precision. I remember a woman I worked with years ago. Her gut told her something was wrong. Her husband had changed subtly, but enough for her to feel it. He was suddenly working later, coming more tired, more distracted. But when she asked, he always had an answer. Calm, collected, convincing. At first, she felt crazy. She blamed herself. Maybe she was being too sensitive. Maybe he really was just stressed. But instead of spiraling, she got focused. She started paying attention. She ran not with vengeance, with clarity. And over time, she noticed the inconsistencies. Dates that didn't line up, messages that seemed off, a receipt in his pocket that didn't belong to their life. She didn't accuse, she collected. When she finally confronted him, it wasn't with rage. It wasn't a scream fest. It was a presentation. Calm, measured, factual. And that was the moment he couldn't lie anymore. Because when you strip emotion from the confrontation, when you stand in truth backed by facts, there's nowhere left for deception to hide. So trust your gut, but build your case. Don't ask for the truth, observe it. Look for what's missing. Look for what's been added. Look for what doesn't make sense. And do it not because you want to catch someone in the act, but because you refuse to keep betraying yourself. You're not crazy. You're not insecure. You're not imagining it. You're just finally listening to what your body has known all along. And now you're pairing it with the one thing that makes truth undeniable. The evidence that speaks louder than any lie. Chapter 3 asks the one question they can't fake. There's a moment in every interrogation, turning point, where the words stop being important and the silence becomes everything. I've sat across from people who could lie with such calm, such precision, it would chill you to your core. But I've also learned that even the best liars have one thing in common: they can't fake instinct. That's why there's one question I've carried with me through rooms filled with secrets, betrayals, and half-truths. One question that stops people cold. It's not, "Where were you?" Not you lying. Not even, "Were you cheating on me?" It's this, "What do you think I already know?" Let that sink in. This one question changes the game, because it forces the person in front of you to confront themselves, not you. It disrupts their mental playbook. Every lie they prepared, every answer they rehearsed, every defense they had in their pocket suddenly doesn't fit. Because now they have to guess what you know. And in that guessing, in that split second of mental scrambling, the mask slips. You see, layers operate best in structure. Give them a narrow question and they'll find the safest, most convincing answer. But give them a question that opens the entire playing field, one without a clear path, and they freeze, not always in obvious ways. Sometimes it's just a flicker, a pause too long, eyes darting upward as they search for what to say, the dry swallow, the shifting in their seat, the sudden need to clarify a detail that hasn't even been mentioned yet. That's where the truth hides, in the reaction, not the response. Because here's what most people get wrong when they're looking for the truth. They expect the lie to be obvious. They expect some dramatic reveal, but the truth rarely screams. It whispers. It shows up in the hesitation, in the things that don't quite line up, in the way someone flinches at the question you didn't telegraph. So when you ask, "What do you think I already know?" you're creating an opening they weren't prepared for. You're handing them their guilt and watching what they do with it. Some will deflect. Some will laugh nervously. Some will get angry. Try to flip it on you, but that's the tell. That's the moment. Because a person who has nothing to hide doesn't panic at that question. They might be confused. They might ask, "What do you mean?" But they won't scramble. They won't dodge, hit. They won't suddenly shift into defense mode. The guilty, they try to find the exact version of the truth they think you've already found. And in doing so, they expose the rest. I've seen it happen 1,000 times. There was a man once, stone cold, polished, rehearsed. We were investigating him for a fraud case. Every answer he gave was perfect. Not too detailed, not too vague, just enough truth to make it believable. Until I leaned in, looked him in the eye and said it. What do you think I already know? At first, then he blinked, and then the silence. 5 seconds. He shifted, his jaw clenched, and then he started talking, not to explain, but to preempt. He started naming things I hadn't even asked about, and that's how I knew, because in trying to protect himself from what I might know, he told me exactly what I didn't. This question works because it's not about catching someone. It's about watching them catch themselves. And yes, they might still lie. Some people will deny to the grave. But your power doesn't come from the answer, it comes from the observation. Because when you understand human behavior, when you stop trying to make someone tell the truth and start inviting it, you begin to see things with brutal clarity. Truth has a rhythm. It's steady, calm, grounded. Lies have static. They interrupt that rhythm. They force a person into over-explanation, into premature clarification, into filling the air with things you never asked for. Because silence terrifies a liar. And an open-ended question like this, it creates a canyon of silence they can't stand to sit in. You don't need a full confession. You don't need drama. You just need a crack. One tiny misstep. One split second of panic. And that's the moment you follow. That's the beginning of the trail. So when the time is right, and only when it's right, you look them in the eye and you ask, not because you want to catch them in the act, but because you want to see who they become when they think the truth might already be standing in the room with them. Chapter 4, don't break down, build up. This right here is the part where most people break. You found the signs. Maybe you've confronted them. Maybe they denied it. Maybe they confessed. Maybe it all exploded in a split second, or maybe it unraveled over weeks like a thread pulled from the seam of your reality. But once the truth touches your bones, once you can no longer unsee what you've seen, you are left standing in the wreckage. And the instinct, what most people do, is collapse. You cry, you question, you crumble. Why wasn't I enough? That question haunts so many, it eats people alive. Let me say this loud, clear, and without apology, their betrayal is not your reflection. It's theirs. It has nothing to do with your worth, your beauty, your heart, or the way you showed up. Betrayal is not born from the victim. It's born from the betrayer. It grows in the soil of their insecurity, their fear, their cowardice. And yet so often we take that knife they plunged into our back and we turn it inward. But not you, not anymore. Because catching a cheat, that's not the real mountain. That's the shadow before the climb. The real work, the real test, is what you do after you do not break. You rise. You gather every shattered piece of yourself, and one by one you start to rebuild. But this time, you don't rebuild to please them. You don't shape yourself into something more lovable, more perfect, more enough. No. You rebuild stronger, sharper, wiser. You stop shrinking to fit into their comfort zone. You stop begging for crumbs at a table they never truly set for. Instead, you build your own table. One plank, one nail, one unshakable truth at a time. You stop asking for someone to love you right and start demanding that you love yourself first. Because, let's be honest, deep down many of us knew, maybe not right away, maybe not in detail, but a feeling, a change, and we looked away, we excused it, we tried harder, we gave more. We said, if I love them enough, they'll come back. But love doesn't fix what someone refuses to face within themselves. And your job was never to save them from their own deception. Your job is to save yourself from the damage they caused. So now you do not collapse, you become. This is your wake-up call, the kind that rips through the noise and makes you look in the mirror and say, who am I now? That question isn't meant to scare you, it's meant to free you. Because now, you get to answer it with fire in your chest and steel in your spine. You're someone who doesn't settle, someone who doesn't chase truth, you command it, someone who knows that pain doesn't mean you're weak, it means you feel. And feeling is power. You've stared betrayal in the face and survived. You've walked through that emotional war zone. Every memory suddenly stained, every promise broken, every I love you turned into an echo, and you're still here. You are still standing. So stand taller. Rebuilding is not just about healing, it's about becoming undeniable. It's about turning every scar into a sentence in your survival story. It's about walking into every room with the knowledge that you've been tested and you didn't fold and know it won't be clean. Some days, some nights you'll question everything. But every tear, every step, every moment of silence that you fill with your own voice instead of theirs, that is you reclaiming yourself. You catch a cheat not to punish them. That's not your job. You catch a cheat to protect yourself, to draw the line, to say, this is where your lie ends, and my truth begins. So when the pain comes, when the urge to blame yourself creeps in, I want you to remember this: the betrayal broke the illusion, not your spirit. You are not broken, you are being rebuilt. And this time, you're building something no one can shake. Chapter 5, close the case. Then close the door. There comes a point in this journey, after all the suspicionless, all the gut checks, the watching, the asking, the aching, where you finally hold the truth in your hands. Maybe it came in a text message. Maybe it was in the way they paused before answering. Maybe it was just something in their eyes that told you everything words couldn't. However the truth arrives, once it's in front of you, there is no going back. And this right here is where the final and most powerful step begins. You must choose to close the case, and then close the door. That sounds simple, it isn't. Because we're taught to chase closure like it's a trophy. We're told we need the whole story, the confession, the apology. We want them to see the damage, to own what they did, to bleed a little so we know they felt something too. But let me be honest with you, closure doesn't come from their mouth. It comes from your choice. You don't need them to admit it. You don't need them to explain. You don't need them to finally realize how much they hurt you. That's not your weight to carry. You already know you lived it. So instead of begging for answers from someone who broke the trust, you pick up your self-respect and you walk out with it. Quiet, steady, whole. That is what it means to close the case. It doesn't mean there's no pain. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself more than their chaos. You're no longer giving them space in your mind. You're no longer analyzing every word, replaying every lie, wondering what's real. You're done being the detective in someone else's story. You're choosing to write your own because there's something more powerful than truth, and that's self-respect. Self-respect says, I do not need your permission to move on. Self-respect says, I don't chase love, I embody it. Self-respect says you no longer get access to me just because you once had it. Think about that, let it really settle inside you. You get to decide who has access to your energy, your peace, your presence. And the moment someone shows you they're willing to lie, to deceive, to gamble with your heart, you take the lesson, not the wound. Catching a cheat isn't about revenge. It's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. You knew something was off. You felt it. You followed the signs. You trusted your gut. And even when it hurt, you stood in the fire to find the truth. That's strength most people never tap into. That's not weakness. That's warrior work. Because walking away with dignity, choosing peace over chaos, that's courage most people never muster. And you don't need to slam the door. You don't need to scream or burn the house down. Sometimes power is quiet. Sometimes it's the steady way you collect your things, the calm in your voice when you say, I know what you did, and I'm done. No breakdown, no battle, just the beautiful, brutal truth and a decision. You are no longer someone who waits to be chosen. You choose yourself. And once you make that choice, once you close that emotional file, you close the door. Full, not halfway. Not 1 foot in and 1 foot out. No watching their stories. No checking if they've texted. No hoping they've changed. The door closes. Click done. Because your healing cannot begin in a room still filled with their lies. You owe it to yourself to walk forward without dragging the past behind you. You are not a victim of betrayal. You are a survivor of it. And survivors don't live in the wreckage. They rebuild beyond it. There is nothing more dangerous, more magnetic, more untouchable than a person who knows their value. Because when you know your worth, you stop arguing with people who don't. And in the silence after the storm, in the stillness of choosing peace over pain, you'll feel it, the power, the clarity, the freedom. You didn't just catch a cheat. You caught yourself, your intuition, your power, your unshakable spirit, and you brought it back home. That's how you win. So to every woman who's doubted herself, to every person who's felt that sinking feeling but stayed quiet, to every heart that's been broken by betrayal and still chose to love again, let me tell you this, you already know. You already have the strength. You are not crazy. You are not paranoid. You are not weak. You are powerful. You are perceptive. You are the evidence. Let this be the day you stop searching for answers in someone else's lies and start trusting the truth inside you. Because the truth, it doesn't hide forever, and neither should you.